So now people say, "Oh, like if I had a rupee for every time I've heard this, I could, I would be a lakpati. I'd have a lakh of rupees." Devotees say, "Well, does that mean that you can just go to go into the temple and dress like a slob, or just wear shorts or blue jeans of the women, or just who knows how?" No, because if we read Bhagavad Gita, there actually is a cultural criteria. You can't do anything. But the criteria is not, is it Indian? The criteria is sattva guna. It's being the mode of goodness. Going to what is called in the Vedas Deva Griha, the house of God, it's inappropriate. It's actually stupid to go there just dressed in an extremely informal or inappropriate way. Because it's the house of God. I mean, I learned that when I was a child. That if you go, whether you go to a synagogue or a church or a mosque or a mandir, you show respect.
Right.
So, in the mode of goodness, obviously the mode of good lust is a symptom of passion and ignorance, not goodness. Therefore, if a man or if a woman is dressing, because men are more visually aroused, so if a woman is dressing, she should dress in a way that does not make people forget Krishna. If a woman dresses in a way that makes men forget Krishna, then she's committing violence against them. And of course men also should dress properly. So the mode of goodness is a sufficient criteria for culture.
So in other words, Krishna West promotes more the mode of goodness than a specific cultural custom.
Ethnic tradition, yes. Yes, because the mode of goodness offered to Krishna. In fact, that is what Krishna teaches in the Gita. That you live in the mode of goodness. That's why he goes to so much trouble to explain so many things in the modes. You live in the mode of goodness, and you offer that life to Krishna. And when you offer sattva to Krishna, it becomes Shuddha sattva. So by definition, a spiritual life is a life in the mode of goodness offered to Krishna. And because it tends to be not what Krishna actually teaches, the mode of goodness offered to Krishna, but Indian, therefore an Indian item in the mode of passion is okay, and something Western in the mode of goodness is not okay. For example, food. A large amount of food, bhoga, offered to Krishna is very much in the mode of passion, according to the Bhagavad Gita. For example, food that is hot and spicy is in the mode of passion. Food that is not healthy is in the mode of passion and ignorance. If you only ate Mahaprasadam, you probably wouldn't live very long. And so people say, but that's what Krishna likes. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that the mode of goodness is best. Offer me. In fact, the Bhagavatam, Krishna says, offer me things in goodness. And so if something is, for example, I've seen this. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it personally. I've seen it on YouTube, where there'll be like Rath Yatra festivals. I can give you many examples of things I've actually seen, where they have stage performances, where the people are not, the women or the men, not even dressed chastely. Not even dressed, but it's Indian. So something in the mode of passion is okay if it's Indian, and something in the mode of goodness is somehow not good even if it's Western. That's not scientific. The spiritual science is not about ethnic traditions. The spiritual science is what Krishna teaches in the Gita. Sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. So to say that we should live in goodness, that's the science. And in fact, because we have de-emphasized that objective cultural criteria, and we have emphasized Indianness, the result is that frankly there's a bit of a de-emphasis in ISKCON on actual goodness. If you wear a dhoti, you're a good devotee even if you don't treat people properly. As long as you're very Indian in the way you live, even if you're just not nice, you're still a good devotee. So, I'm sure in Germany, certainly in America, it's very powerful, where people make this distinction between religious and spiritual.
Yes.
And guess where that comes from? It comes from people in general observing religious people.
Okay.
It's facts. In fact, someone just told me they did a scientific study, and they found that religious people that are very religious, tend to be less compassionate than people in general.
Yes, I can give a practical example where I witnessed exactly what you said. We were going inside a plane, and there was a full-fledged dressed Muslim with every mark you can imagine to immediately discover him as a Muslim, with a beard, with white clothes. And I just asked him, could I go to that row there behind? And he was so rough. He was even hitting me with his elbow, and I was so shocked. And he was just, we were going from Frankfurt via a Muslim country to India, and he was only focused, I am going to Mecca. And you are all irreligious people, and I am going to Mecca. I could see this consciousness in his eyes, and that was exactly what you explained. He was so religious, but even very simple qualities like kindness were, at least in that situation, completely absent.
Yes. So, yes, exactly. So what I believe we should do is emphasize goodness. Goodness offered to Krishna, not goodness without Krishna. Because that's the very definition of the spiritual platform. Shuddha, sattva. The activity by itself is sattva, goodness. And when you offer it to Krishna, as explained in the Gita, I think it's 4:24, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. When you offer something to Krishna, it becomes spiritual. So it is shuddha, it is purified. So that's what, by definition, shuddha sattva. And I think if we say to people that objectively, and it is obvious, there are three modes of nature. There's an obvious difference between goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's empirical. And if we say to people, what does it mean to practice bhakti yoga? It means you cultivate goodness and you offer it to Krishna. That is a spiritual science.
So in other words, could you explain the reason why Krishna conscious devotees or the members of ISKCON tend to appear in ISKCON centers in a sloppy way as soon as you allow them? Yes, you can also come in Western clothes. And immediately,
yes.
Many
Good
of
question.
them...
Yes, I think the reason is, rather than teaching culture, we taught rules. Prabhupada once wrote me a letter in 1972. It's in the Veda base. When I took sannyas and I started to travel and preach in American universities. And Prabhupada wrote me a letter right at the beginning and said, please do not present Krishna consciousness as a bunch of rules. It is the most sublime philosophy. And Prabhupada also said, by the way, he said, I know that you, my disciples, don't care about how you look, but for my sake, dress nicely. So I think that we have not emphasized common virtues. When you go to a house of God, show respect. Show respect. For example, sometimes when I'm out on my japa walks, I take long japa walks, and sometimes I'll stop in a church just to rest or just, it's nice to be in a religious place. And so I take my hat off. Why? To show respect. And if I go into a synagogue, I put the little hat on for the same reason, to show respect. So the fact that people go to temples dressed inappropriately in Western dress, frankly, it shows we have not given them culture. We did not train these people. We gave them rules, but not culture. Because how could a cultured person go into a temple like that?
Right.
We have not given culture, we've given rules. And then when you get to the point where you don't want to follow that rule, there's no culture.
I very much believe that usually, especially the women, are a little bit concerned when they heard something about they should dress appropriately in the mode of goodness. When they hear such things, some of them gets a little uncomfortable. What do you exactly mean? How should women dress?
Well, they have to wait for our first edition of our Krishna West Ladies Fashion magazine. I'm just kidding. I think it's common sense. Non-devotees understand it. It's not, they're not going to, it just means, well, to give an example, they did a recent poll study, and it turns out that I think the most respected or admired or something, Umfrage. Umfrage. And they found that the most respected or admired woman in the world was Hillary Clinton. Now, obviously, she's not known as being a great fashion lady, but at the same time, she's, she dresses nicely and very chastely. Look at Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel dresses chastely. She is a woman that has self-respect, and people respect her. She's very respected everywhere. Why? Because she respects herself. And she dresses chastely. And so does Hillary Clinton. So, if I would say to a woman, if you don't know what types of displays around, what planet have you been on? Where have you been? Like, are you coming from some other sector of the galaxy? We all know that. We all know that men are fools. And they tend, and also science tells us what we already knew, that men are highly aroused and agitated visually. And that's why, 99.9% of the pornography on the web or anywhere else is men looking at women. Right. I guess maybe not 99.9% because there's also homosexual websites, but let's say the overwhelming preponderance, and it's that's not socially constructed. It's natural. That is actually the result of just human nature. So therefore, knowing that men are so weak and are so liable to be disturbed and agitated and become stupid, because other studies show that when the presence of women, men actually become stupid, which we already should know that. So actually, this has been scientifically confirmed. So if a woman knows that, and if a woman has compassion, in other words, I have a very simple question for women. What is more important to you? Your vanity or your compassion?
Oh, interesting.
Which is more important to you? Are you more concerned with helping your brothers and showing love and compassion and helping them to go back to Krishna? Or is it more important to you than helping people go back to Krishna is your vanity? And if the answer is your vanity, then probably Krishna West is not for you. Women, I'll tell you just my natural reaction. Obviously, as trying to be a devotee and trying to be a sannyasi, it's not that I go around just looking at women, but you see them, they're everywhere. It's like men are everywhere. And so I've noticed a spontaneous reaction in myself. Spontaneous. when I see women, let's say with a long skirt, for example, not devotees, just women, I just spontaneously respect them. I just feel a real respect for them. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. What's more important, your vanity or compassion towards other souls? What's more important?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very interesting.
Well, see, that's an example of what Prabhupada said. What I just explained is not a rule. It is philosophy. It is philosophy based on social science, based on history, and based on spiritual principles. It's not the rule follows the philosophy. The philosophy doesn't exist to justify the rule. Just like, for example, some people may say, no, we have to dress in Indian dress, and therefore they try to develop arguments, which are, to be honest, a little unnatural, but actually, let's start with science. Prabhupada was not against science. Prabhupada was against what is called scientism. That's a word, actually. But scientism means sort of a fanatical belief in science, an irrational belief in the power of science to explain everything, which is irrational. So, Prabhupada was against scientism, scientismus. In other words, the idea that science can explain life, or the idea that, sure, there is bios, logos, biology from the Greek, the study of life, but they can't explain the ultimate origin. They can only explain the physical conditions in which life is sustained in a particular environment. So, Prabhupada was against scientism. Prabhupada loved science. If he found there was a new technology where he could fly faster to his destination, there was a better dictaphone, there was a cure for a disease. Don't forget that when Prabhupada was in a lot of discomfort toward the end of his stay here in this world, in Vrindavan, and all the Ayurveda doctors couldn't help him, but he went to England, just a regular English doctor relieved all his discomfort. So Prabhupada was not against science. He was against such as, sort of what I call epistemological imperialism, where science thinks it can explain everything. So, scientifically, Prabhupada said it's philosophy, it's science. The rule follows the science. Scientifically, the four sinful activities ruin consciousness. Scientifically. The rule follows science. Science, we don't try to fabricate science to justify a rule.